Welcome, everyone, to Couch Potato Theater here on the Fandom Podcast Network, where we celebrate our favorite movies. My name is Kevin. I'll be your host. I'd like to welcome you to a very special presentation of Couch Potato Theater. This is Spinal Tap 1984. We're going to have fun on this one. But first, I'd like to introduce my guest for this. And first of all, I'd like to welcome my co-host of the Hair Metal podcast here on the Fandom Podcast Network, Mr. Mike Simmer. What's going on, buddy?
I'm hoping that we can finally answer the question, what's the difference between golf and miniature golf here tonight?
You're starting already. I love it, man. I love it. I love it. Well, as I mentioned, before we bring our guest on here, this is Spinal Tap here on Couch Potato Theater, the Fandom Podcast Network. And we got a lot of stuff to get in here, too. Now, for those of you that may not know Mike here on Couch Potato Theater, he is my regular co-host on the Hair Metal podcast, which is also under the Fandom Podcast Network umbrella. And Mike, we have a little chat called the Hair Metal Council, where we talk all hair metal. And we've had this next guest on many times. Would you like to welcome him in?
Well, he is my my friend and nemesis when it comes to speaking about hair metal. Many agreements and disagreements, but always friendly. It is Nez.
Hey. What's going on, Nez?
Nice to see you guys tonight.
Welcome to Couch Potato Theater, where this is music related. It is metal related. So I feel like you're going to fit right on here. So yeah.
Looking forward to it, guys. Absolutely.
Okay. Now we have another special guest here who I just met recently, and I need you to tell me about why you're bringing on this next guest there, Mike.
Well, I think this next guest has a really just an infinite knowledge of movies in general. He is.
Hold on. More than this guy right here?
I mean, it'd be close. It would be close. But I will tell you this. He knows more about Jaws than anyone I've ever met in my life.
All right. I respect that. Nice. Okay.
So we want to welcome our new guest, Bobby A.
What's up, Bob A? Welcome to Couch Potato Theater.
What's up, guys? Glad to be here.
So I hear you're a bit of a movie nerd. I like that. Welcome to the club.
Thank you. Yeah. Love it. Love it.
All right. We are discussing Couch Potato Theater. This is Spinal Tap, guys. And before we go on and talk about that, I did want to tease a little stuff we are having on the network here, some stuff that has arrived and coming soon. And of course, we've been doing a lot of fun Couch Potato Theaters. One of our most downloaded and viewed ones is Hard Target, celebrated its 30th anniversary. And we also did Rex Manning Day, aka Empire Records. We did Payback from 1999. We talked both about the director's cut and the regular cut. We did a little Valentine's Day Wimbledon. We also did Rockstar Couch Potato Theater. Had you on there, Mike, talking about Rockstar.
That was a good time.
We returned to Van Damme because we are doing a time travel theme throughout the Fandom Podcast Network this year of 2024. We did Time Cop. We also had special guest star Anthony DeLongis, friend of the network, but also co-star of Roadhouse. We had him on discussing Roadhouse, of course, 1989, celebrating it. That was a lot of fun. We also went to talked about The Losers. Big fan of that movie. Made sure we wanted to see remind people about how awesome that movie was. We also celebrated the anniversary of The Mummy. We also went back to 1986 and talked about the BMX masterpiece that is Rad. And we also celebrated Deadpool month with re-release of Deadpool 1. And we also did Deadpool 2 with, of course, a special look with our True Believers podcast. And we did a spoiler reaction show to Deadpool and Wolverine. But also just released, we did Couch Potato Theater, Edge of Tomorrow, Live, Die, Repeat, following the theme, of course, of time travel. And we just released True Lies, celebrating its 30th anniversary. Nice. Personally, my favorite Arnold Schwarzenegger film, and also a really good Bond film.
Yeah, that's it.
Coming soon, of course, we have The Abyss. We're doing a little bit of Cameron deep diving with the new 4Ks. And, of course, we are discussing Spinal Tap on this show. But, Mike, you're the co-host of our hair metal podcast here, buddy. We did some hair metal stuff. I thought I'd kind of push that right now since we're talking metal.
Yes.
Your first show, we had Hair Metal Podcast, episode 20. We talked about rock metal bands that should have been bigger. We also did a deep dive into For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge, a 1991 Van Halen album. We talked about Sammy Hagar's current 2024 tour. We also did a special hair metal podcast on the Rockstar soundtrack, Mike. That was pretty much just a full-on metal album that was released under the guise of a movie.
Yes. Yes.
And in one of the most infamous moments of metal history, no, not the Poison, horrible, live MTV event, not people getting in a fight. We learned about Bobby Durango on Hair Metal Podcast, episode 22, the 1989 Hair Metal Supergroup Draft, where we picked our top 5 member supergroup from the year of 1989. And that was a lot of fun. And the last few that we did here too, we did Hair Metal Podcast Hearing Aid, The Stars, an all-star tribute album for Famine Relief, came out in 1986. And we recently just did Best Cover Songs by Hair Metal Era Bands. Make sure you guys check that out. A lot of fun there, right, Mike?
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. We always enjoy ourselves. So I have a lot of laughs about it. Yes.
All right, guys, we're here to talk about some Spinal Tap here. 1984. Excuse me. This is Spinal Tap. I'm showing some posters here on YouTube, and if you're listening to this podcast, make sure you check out the video on the Fandom Podcast Network because we've got some really cool slides to accompany this. But guys, it is movie time. Let's start talking about the movie. All right. So one thing I want to mention before we kind of start getting some opinions here is I like to do what's called the IMDb, possibly vague, not always spot on plot description. IMDb says Spinal Tap, one of England's loudest bands, is chronicled by film director Marty Di Bergi on what proves to be a fateful tour. Is that pretty spot on there? Let's start with you, Bobby. Does that sound right?
I thought the tour was just hysterical from the beginning to the end, between cancellations and everything that could go wrong, particularly when they couldn't get into their hotel room. They were all canceled. And then great news, we got the room, but the gig is canceled.
Well,
why are we staying here?
We're gonna get into that because that's some good stuff right there. This movie just keeps rolling with the punches, so to speak. Didn't want to give some information here. Release date was March 2nd, 1984. At a tight running time of 82 minutes. This movie could have been 3 hours. We'll talk about that later. The budget was only $2 million, and the box office was only $4.7 million. Mike, I think it gained steam on home video.
Yeah, I think HBO, or at the time, that's when really people started listening, because Rob Reiner has said too, it was not really marketed that well, and when I first saw it in the movie theater, I was convinced that it was a real band, and
a lot of people were.
And I was 14 when it came out, and I was thinking, I know that guy from somewhere, when it was Michael McKean, and I didn't know anybody else, but I thought, I know that guy from somewhere, but I can't place him. Maybe he's in a band that I didn't know of. So I think a lot of people went there thinking it was a real band.
Nez, the genius about the release of this film was that it could have been this band that the Americans never heard of because it was touted that way.
Right.
But they're doing like an American tour and it's being chronicled. Let's talk about how we first saw this, guys. Mike, you mentioned that you saw it in the theater, right?
Yeah, I saw it in the theaters. They used to there was a movie theater right by the mall that we used to hang out at, and they used to have Tuesday night for like $2 or $1. And we went there. We would always go every Tuesday, and we eventually ran out of movies that we could see. And my buddy's mother said that this movie Spinal Tap was getting really good reviews, and we were all metalheads, and we went in there, and we were all looking at each other, thinking, "Who is this band? Why don't we know them at all?" And then about halfway through, we were cracking up hysterical because it was so deadpan. Everything was so deadpan that we thought these are the biggest morons we've ever seen in our entire lives, and we immediately became fans. And
that's awesome.
I think we went home, and my friend's mother told us, "No, that's not a real band." So then it became even more funny, and I think we went out back and saw it the next week.
So, real quick, how did you watch it recently? Well,
I have the DVD.
Gotcha.
But it's hard to find on streaming. It'll pop up on a streaming platform every now and then, but not very often.
Yep,
Not
you're
very
right.
often.
You're absolutely right.
And when it's on a streaming platform, it'll only be on for about a month and then disappear.
Okay. Well, Nez, what about you? Where did you first see it, and how did you watch it recently? And the reason why I ask this question, guys, is because if people that are listening or watching this podcast are go, I want to see this again, and they don't have it on DVD, how can they watch it, if any? So, Nez.
I was aware of it without really thinking too much about it again because of my older brother I've talked about, that he was telling my parents about it, and he had the physical soundtrack to it. That would have been around the release time of it. And a little later on, we'll talk about big moments, but really, the year it came out was huge for metal, like all the releases that came out. But I saw it for the first time. Giving a shout out to my friend Mike Berry that I was a high school friend with. So I want to say 88, maybe, that we had to rent it on VHS, and he was raving about it. So we rented it and we watched it at his house. I knew it was, a farce because everything he'd said.
Wait, did he ruin it for you?
No, yeah. But something, I don't know if I read this, but I don't know if it's true that it's often been said that when Steven Tyler was sat down to watch this film, that he didn't find it funny.
No, he didn't.
And he also thought it was a real band and looked at the person who was laughing and just saying, what's funny about any of this?
Yeah.
And I don't know if it really is a tribute to Steven Tyler, but I heard some, him.
Oh, there's a lot of thoughts on what this is based on. That's a great story. Right. Bobby, I want to go to you, sir. How did you first see Spinal Tap, and how did you watch it recently?
Well, oddly enough, I was stationed in Maine at the time it came out. I was in the Air Force, and I don't remember. I saw it at the movie theater. I can't remember if it was the base theater or the theater in the local town. But me and a couple of my buddies went and watched it, and I think I was the only one who actually liked it. They kind of didn't quite get it. I guess my humor is a lot different. And then I came home. I actually bought the soundtrack, the album. I had that for a long time. Unfortunately, I can't find that.
Yeah.
I don't. It's got to be around. So I just don't know. But I have my copy of the DVD.
Nice.
So I did a watch because I knew we were going to be doing this just to kind of give a refresh. So I watched it the other day. Nice. It just hooked me right away. I could not. I become obsessed with things when I like them. So I became obsessed with that, much to my wife's chagrin, I guess.
So I missed this in the theater. This was not on my radar. In 83 and 84, I was going to the theater a lot more, but I wasn't seeing a lot of rated R films at the time. And my parents, they would take me to certain movies. I would go to movies with certain friends, but for whatever reason, this movie didn't come into my area and stay long. And obviously looking at the box office receipts, we can tell why. But then when it started hitting the video and movie and stuff, and we didn't have pay channels in my house, so I had to go to other kids' houses. But we started hitting VHS and stuff, and friends of mine were telling about this. You got to see this. And I thought it was a real band when I first saw it. No one really said, "Hey, this was a fake band." You got to see this. This is really, really funny. And then I kind of started putting two and two together, going, "Oh, okay, all right." And it's funny too, because I kept it on VHS. I recorded it off some channel for a while, and then I eventually bought VHS, and then I never ended up getting the Blu-rays. I kind of stuck with my DVD, and I really like this cover. But recently, though, and I'm going to get back into the DVD in a second, I did finally get to see Spinal Tap on the big screen, guys. One of our local theaters, which is actually owned by the Santa Barbara International Film Festival, and it's actually the best theater with sound and seating and projection. They were showcasing a 2-night 40th anniversary event, and so I finally got to see this movie on the big screen. And you should have seen the crew. You should have seen the people that were there. They all dressed it up in rock outfits and old band T-shirts, and girls were teasing their hair. It was great. And of course, I had to represent the hair metal podcast by wearing my hoodie, my hair metal hoodie there. So, Yeah, that was a lot of fun. It was just great to see it on the big screen. And you realize how tight this movie is at a good 85 minutes, because you're literally watching it from the beginning all the way to the end through the credits, because they're showing scenes and interviews through the credits. It's genius. It really, really is.
Yeah.
And I did want to mention, of course, that the DVDs and laser discs. So I'm a big DVD physical media collector, and I actually have working laser disc, and I have the Spinal Tap laser disc. And I just wanted to show you guys real quick here of the Criterion edition of the laser disc, and I'm showing it here on video. It's pretty cool. One of the things I love about laser discs, and I know people collect these even without having the ability to play them, because they're like albums. You can open them up, and this is a 2-disc version, and they got like a whole layout here of it. And then on the back, it shows the special features on the laser disc too. Some of the stuff that translated back to the discs, you know, the DVDs and such. And I love the laser disc. But also, guys, my wife's Australian. I don't know if you know that. I went to Australia recently, and I found an Australian release of Spinal Tap, the up to 11 edition. And, you know, I'm a sucker for a new release of a cool movie that I like when it's got a cool cover, especially with 3 discs of special features, man.
Yeah, 4 hours of bonus content.
A lot of
it's insane, guys. And I have the
That's
disc
like
with me
Lord
here.
of the Rings territory.
Yeah.
It's impressive. Like, check it out. You open it up, right? And it's got 3 discs on here. It's amazing. But I open up this one to show you guys something, because they were showing some special, they were showing all the deleted scenes that you can watch. And I don't know if you guys have seen all the deleted scenes or not on this. And they list quite a few on here, but I'm going to verbally mention what the deleted scenes are for a reason later on. Romance, mystery, sheer sex is a scene in there. Opening night party. That's kind of like the extended one that we see with a lot more interviews and people talking. They had promo spots. Derek's out of circulation. There's a side story about Derek Smalls talking with like an estranged wife or something. Things going on with like, I think his property or whatever. Tommy's corruption. Backstage shenanigans going on. Trouble in Memphis. Respects to the king. A little more information behind the king when they go to Graceland. They have On the Air with Spinal Tap, a very funny scene where they're being interviewed live, but people are calling in what traffic reports instead. And then we find out that David St. Hubbins has a son. He's kind of like this little new wave kid that's like snarky, and they're not getting along.
Oh God.
There's a Rome 79. There's a recording studio meltdown, which is kind of an extended of the one that we see in the movie. Now, there's 2 scenes that I love the best. Nigel's replacement, when he quits the band, they get this really like Leif Garrett type singer kid who sings really well. He's young, he's sexy, he plays guitar, and he ends up like taking over the lead singing. And you see David St. Hubbins looking at him with disdain and like, who the fuck is this kid? Hilarious. Then there's like more stuff with them at the zoo. But remember the scene when there's no one that shows up for the signing? Remember that?
Yeah.
Well, they show the scene that was cut from it. This young blonde kid comes in. He's the only one there. They signed the Smell the Glove album in black Sharpie, so you can't see it.
Black Sharpie, so you can't see it. And they were telling him to hold it a certain way. They're telling him, hold it, you got to hold it this way. You got to look at it at an angle. And
oh God, that one, I laughed on the floor with that, because I've been in the convention industry before, and it's a big no-no to sign autographs with black unless, you know, usually they have like a silver or, you know, a blue or something like that. I can't believe they did that.
The best thing about that whole scene that I always found funny was it was on a Tuesday from 2 to 4 p.m.
Yeah.
It says right about it, appearing Tuesday from 2 to 4 p.m.
Good stuff there. All right, guys, let's get into the opening movie discussion. Okay, so I wanted to start off with a little bit of background here. Michael McKean and Christopher Guest met while in college in New York City in the late 1960s, and they played music together. They worked with Harry Shearer and Rob Reiner on a TV pilot in 1978 for a sketch comedy show called The TV Show, which featured a parody rock band called Spinal Tap. During production of that sketch, while being burned with oil from an on-stage effect. McKean and guests begin to improvise, inventing characters that became David St. Hubbins and Nigel Tufnell. Guest had previously played guitar under the name Nigel Tufnell, and Michael McKean and David Lander's album Lenny and the Squigtones, of course, from Lenny and Squiggy. And did you know that at all, Mike?
Yeah, I did that. I did know that one, especially the when they were burned with oil thing. I remember that as well. Yeah.
So I have an article here, guys, I wanted to showcase because I thought it would be a good discussion. This came out earlier this year. This came out March of 2024, which of course is and was the actual 40th anniversary of this movie. This is Spinal Tap at 40, a note perfect rock satire, still goes up to 11. And this is from theguardian.com. Christopher Guest and Rob Reiner made an 84 classic that ingenuously straddles the fine line between stupid and clever. From the top of the charts to the opening for a puppet show, the rising and falling fortunes of Spinal Tap reiterate a familiar showbiz arc, dotting the behind-the-scenes tropes, including a Yoko-esque girlfriend, exasperating intra-band tensions, and the long-suffering manager permanently at the end of his rope. I just wanted to kind of start there, guys. I want to get your take on the legacy of this movie and how it has impacted a lot of people. Some people call this a perfect movie. Some people say this is the best movie about music ever. They say this movie really kind of started the rockumentary thing and got it going forward. Some people thought it was real. Bobby, I want to start with you and get your thoughts on that.
Well, I think the fact that we're talking about it 40 years after it happened, from a standpoint that this was a movie that cost $2 million to make, only made $4 million, and yet here we are 40 years later still talking about it, says a lot about, its lasting impact, that people still have enough interest in it to want to talk about it, to still quote it. I use the quotes in that movie today. I play music with some buddies of mine I grew up with, and the scene where they're walking through looks like the backstage and can't find the stage. Well, we played a place like that up in Doylestown in Pennsylvania, and we're walking through a kitchen to go to a stairs and go up a stairs and then make a turn. And I'm like, and the whole time we're walking through, I'm just going, rock and roll, rock and roll. And it's like,
hello, Cleveland.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Doylestown.
So what you're saying is you're quoting this movie and living it at the same time.
At the same time, because I'm like, how do we get to this room where we got to go? And always, that goes to 11, whatever it is, So the impact is just kind of like, it's still here. It still resonates, particularly with people who really, really enjoy, watching documentaries about bands, either real or fake. And, it just kind of speaks, and it just continues to speak. You can always find something new that oh my God, I completely forgot about that. Or I don't, oh, that's brand new, I just noticed it.
That's awesome. That is very well said. Nez, expand on that, please. Legacy of Spinal Tap. Why are we still enjoying it?
I think it's incredibly amazing that the band actually toured. Like they've had a handful of reunion shows, like in the early 2000s, or even like the 2009 or 2010.
They played a 2007 at Wimbledon for some green thing or whatever. They reunited, and Rob Reiner came on as Martin Di Bergi, and they played there. So yeah, they always get back together and play when they can.
Right. So it's just life imitating art imitating life. Like they really have done that. And I know when you talk about the hearing aid, the fact that you had A-list rock stars, but for some reason they decided to include the fictitious Spinal Tap in this charity thing. So it's just really just a really wild thing to kind of happen, that they were making fun of a scene that actually embraced them. So.
I'm glad you brought that up, because Mike, I want you to expand on that. Whether people like Steven Tyler, as you mentioned, Nez, earlier, saying this movie wasn't funny the first time I saw it, but it seems like the rock community and the musicians that this movie was sort of poking fun at have embraced them and consider them one of their own.
Yeah, I think they finally got the joke. I think Steven Tyler said he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I think it carries a legacy because you can always relate it. It's become a lexicon. This is our Spinal Tap moment, for a band. This is our Spinal Tap moment. I think it's 40 years old, but you could probably find a band out there today who are just as ridiculous, right? who are just as moronic as them, and go through the trials and tribulations of Spinal Tap. There's always going to be that band who are filled with idiots.
I think there's bands right now that are probably having those Spinal Tap moments, and they know it.
Yeah. Yes, I saw an interview with Christopher Guest, who a lot of people think that the band was focused on, but he said he was in an airport, and where he got the idea for Spinal Tap, he was in an airport, and the bass player lost his bass, and he was I know he's at the hotel, and he said, I think, and the bass player
and it was an English group, yeah,
it was an English group, and he kept on saying, I don't know, I think it's at the airport, and they were like, why did you leave it at the airport? He said, I don't know why I left it at the airport, and he said it went on for 20 minutes, and Christopher Guest just stood there and watched the whole thing, and so even I'm sure that happens even today, especially the bass player. The bass player always screws things up. So I think it still is important to a lot of people, and special to a lot of people, because you can still relate to it today.
Yeah, no, totally. I think that's why it's endured for so long. In a way, it's timeless, even though all during the time is dated, but because of the situations are still happening nowadays, and we can get that later. But one thing I did want to mention, this Spinal Tap Australian edition is a Australian UK production. So all the interviews are from like English people, famous English people, comedians, and some other musicians. And they have some musicians on there talking about this. Some people thought it was real, but Ricky Gervais was interviewed in this. And we know who Ricky Gervais is. He started the original production of The Office, and he says The Office was inspired from Spinal Tap. And an interviewer asked him, if Spinal Tap wasn't around, would Office still be around? He says, yes, but it would be much darker. Anyway, if you find this Australian version, check it out, because the interviews that are done in this, I don't think are in other editions. It was pretty cool. Okay, so one of the cool things about Spinal Tap, guys, is they've reunited, they performed. We'll talk about more about what's coming in the future with them. But of course, I feel like one of the biggest shows in the world. It's been around for over 30 years, 35 years now. It has this uncanny ability to predict the future. But we also had a very special appearance on Simpsons Spinal Tap, live on The Simpsons Thursday, April 28th, 8 p.m. And Spinal Tap, of course, came on. And as you guys know, of course, Harry Shearer plays a lot of the voices on Spinal Tap, and he reunited on what was called The Auto Show, this 22nd episode of the third season of The Simpsons, first aired on Fox, April 23rd, 1992. In the episode, Bart wants to become a rock star after attending a Spinal Tap concert. So Homer and Marge buy him a car. He shows the guitar to Otto, who plays it and makes the children late for school. While racing to Springfield Elementary, Otto crashes the bus and is suspended until he earns a driver's license. Unable to pay his rent, Otto moves in with the Simpsons. And of course, Harry Shearer, who plays Derek Smalls, of course, went on to do a lot of the voices, including Principal Skinner, Mr. Burns, Whalum Smithers, Ned Flanders, and so many more. Do you guys remember this episode? Bobby, start with you.
To be honest with you, I remember when they did it, because I don't really watch The Simpsons, but I specifically watched it because I knew that they were going to be on it at one point. But that was about 100 years ago.
Yeah.
I just remember just actually, watching it just to see them and see how they were going to portray them,
Yeah. Nez, you were shaking your head. You didn't either, right?
No, I didn't see it, because if you said 1992, I think during my undergraduate years of college, I really just didn't watch a lot of TV. Just kind of There really
just
are.
say you were dating girls and having more fun. I got you.
You were in a drunken haze. Probably.
I lived in a dorm. We didn't have a TV. I just didn't see it.
Mike, do you remember this episode, Mike?
There's so many Simpson episodes. Is there 1,000 Simpson episodes now? It's tough to remember any Simpsons episode at this point. They're really. I can't remember. But one thing I really want to know is who's that drummer and what became of him.
Yeah. It looks like a girl drummer actually from this picture, but I vaguely remember it. But I have a feeling this might have been a cross promotion because they had released Break Like the Wind in 91, 92. So there might have been a cross promotion with that. And of course their album and them doing selected. Do you guys remember it was on MTV, I think. They were is during this time, the Break Like a Wind thing, and they were interviewing or trying out new drummers, and Mick Fleetwood showed up to. Yeah. You guys remember that?
Yes, he showed up in one of those flame retardant suits.
Yes.
Yeah. I remember that because you can see it. There's a video of it.
There was a lot of spontaneous combustion with that band.
Yeah. We'll get into that later with the drummers. I did want to mention some movie reviews. Spinal Tap is widely regarded as one of the best films of 94 or 84. The film holds a 90% rating on Rotten Tomatoes with an average rating of 8.60 out of 10. And the Metacritic gives it a 92 out of 100. But Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times gave the film. Guys want to take a guess?
An 11.
A 3.
He does it out of 4. He gave it a 4 out of 4 and wrote, "This is Spinal Tap is one of the funniest, most intelligent, most original films of the year. The satire has a deft, wicked touch. Spinal Tap is not that much worse than, not much different from the most successful rock bands." Ebert later placed the film on his 10 best list of 84 and would later include it in the Great Movies List 2001, where he called it one of the funniest movies ever made. And his co-host, Gene Siskel, awarded 4 out of 4, writing, "It was so well done, in fact, that unless you are clued in beforehand, you might take a while to realize the rock group under dissection, This is Spinal Tap, doesn't really exist." Are you guys surprised at these reviews, Bobby?
Yeah, the Ebert review kind of surprises me. I don't really put much stock in what critics say most times, but he was always one of those big name guys, and he never seemed to really like anything that I thought worth watching.
Right.
And from that, I'm kind of surprised he rated it that high.
What about you, Nez?
I am too. That's why I said I thought it was out of 10. I said 3 because those guys, when we used to watch them, my brother and we always disagreed with them. Yes. We always disagreed with them all the time. But I'm touched to learn that they regarded it so highly. Like, I'm actually really glad to hear that. That's cool.
Yeah. What about you, Mike?
Yeah, I'm surprised and not surprised at the same time because I think those guys really kind of got the in joke, and also I think, being around the movies for a long time, they probably were around a lot of celebrities and realized the idiocy of the egomaniac celebrities. And it was inherent in the film. So they probably lived a bunch of that, and they probably related it and thinking, "Oh my God, we've been through that." So I think they got the joke. I really do think that if you went through all the reviews and the people who gave it a bad review are probably people who just didn't get the joke.
Yeah. It's hard to find any bad reviews on this, but Rotten Tomatoes said 96%. So there's got to be that 4% out there that are idiots. So yeah.
You're not picking up on it.
Yeah. Well, speaking of, I want to mention some of the accolades that this movie has. In 2008, Empire Magazine ranked Spinal Tap number 48 on its list of the 500 greatest movies of all time. Wow. That's pretty high. New York Times placed this film on their list of the best 1,000 movies ever made. In 2010, Total Film placed This Is Spinal Tap on the list of the 100 greatest movies of all time. When Entertainment Weekly compiled their list of the 100 greatest movies of all time, the publication included this film as just too beloved to ignore. 2011, Time Out London named it the best comedy film of all time. And in 2015, November, this film was ranked the 11th funniest screenplay by the Writers Guild of America in its list of 101 funniest screenplays, which I find very funny, guys, because this movie...
There was no screenplay report.
Yeah, I mean, most of it was improvised.
Yeah, this was about that big.
Yeah. It's 4 pages.
Yeah.
That's why it was the best, because it was only 4 pages.
Talk about this. Talk about that.
Yeah, right.
Yep,
You get
absolutely
lost.
right.
Yeah.
Well, guys, this is movie trivia time here, and we have some Spinal Tap trivia. And normally we have about 5 to 10 trivia, but because this is Spinal Tap, we have 11.
Gotta go to 11.
So there we go.
Okay.
All right, number 1, Harry Shearer, Rob Reiner, Christopher Guest, and Michael McKean were given $10,000 to write a script. They made a 20-minute version of the film to better demonstrate the improvisation that they had in mind. Several scenes from the demo are in the finished movie. I'm guessing that when you have to do a movie, you have to actually show a script. But I think it's every time I think of this type of thing, I think of who's the villain pirate in Pirates of the Caribbean?
Jeffrey Rush.
Jeffrey Rush, yeah, where he says they're more of guidelines, you know.
Yeah. Not a hard and fast rule. Yeah.
So there was a deleted subplot involving all female opening act from what all the Spinal Tap members contracted herpes.
No.
In several scenes of the finished movie, the band members have visible cold sores.
Yeah, I noticed that. They never address it. They never.
Did you guys ever wonder, like, why do they all have cold sores?
They at the album release party, I know Nigel and David both have them.
And they're talking, and you can they're close up, and no one says anything. It's like,
I have a feeling, Nez, that when it comes to that type of stuff that happens among band members, whether it's cold sores or whatever, it's like, you don't talk about that.
You know, if I may, that was part of this film's genius, is that we all know that the rock and roll lifestyle, sex is a huge part of it, but the guys in Spinal Tap, you don't see them really running around with groupies, but just that visual lets the viewers know that, they're doing it and they're sharing the same woman. And that was just awesome. Yeah. You know? It really was so great. Yeah.
So several rock stars have commented on what an uncanny, accurate spoof of the rock and heavy metal world this film was. Ozzy Osbourne said that when he first watched the film, he was the only person who wasn't laughing. He thought it was a real documentary. U2 guitarist The Edge said, "I didn't laugh, I wept. It was too close to the truth." Marilyn had 5 drummers in a space of a year between their first 2 albums, which guitarist Steve Rothery later admitted was like Spinal Tap. Our 4th bit of trivia, Rob Reiner originally was going to be one of the band members. He ended up directing after Harry Shearer said that he didn't look good in spandex. Would he have been like a keyboardist? Like what would he have played?
Jeez.
He has a drummer's build.
Yeah.
He also have drummers, but
I guess they could have killed him off.
But then you have to kill him off.
If you put them behind the drums, nobody can really see what they look like. So
So we touched on this here. Since the film was improvised by all the performers, Rob Reiner, Christopher Guest, Michael McKean, and Harry Shearer went to the Writers Guild hoping to give proper credit to everyone. The board of directors voted unanimously that the credits should stay as they were, including only the 4 of them. So there you go. Number 6, big deal here, guys. 2002, the Library of Congress deemed this movie culturally, historically, aesthetically significant and selected it for preservation in the United States National Film Registry. Awesome. This is Rob Reiner's first film to be selected. The second would be The Princess Bride in 2016.
Nice.
You know how they send stuff into outer space as like a time capsule? Would it backfire if this was sent out there for aliens to watch?
Yes. We would be immediately attacked. We would be immediately attacked. They would say, "This is if everyone down there is this stupid, we have to attack right away."
Number 7, to prepare for the film, director Rob Reiner attended a concert by metal icons Judas Priest. Quote, "It physically hurt my chest," said Reiner. "The reverberation in the hall was so strong, I couldn't stay there any longer." Nice. That's probably how he got the idea of the loudest band is probably because of Priest. Early versions of the film, which included the music video Hellhole and extra others, had a disclaimer at the very end stating that the band did not actually exist. Do you guys remember this at all? Because I don't.
I remember the video. I remember the video, but I don't remember.
Yeah, I remember the video, but not the disclaimer.
Why would you do that?
Right.
I don't know.
Again, doesn't it? But it's almost like contradicts itself because they really did perform it.
Yeah.
And record it. So it really is a band.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, they played live, so they are technically a band.
Yeah.
Agreed. Yeah.
Right.
Number 9. When Nigel describes the sustain on his Les Paul guitar, he said that he could go out and get a bite and, quote, you'll still be hearing that one. Les Paul described the sustain on one of his own guitars. You could go out and eat and come back and the note would still be sounding.
Mm-hmm.
I did want to do a little side trivia on this. I don't know if you guys have been to the LA area, but the guitars that were actually, and you'll notice one of the characters in the film, I think it might have been Nigel. He's wearing a t-shirt called Norm's Rare Guitars.
Yeah.
It still exists. It's in the Valley. It's one of the most famous guitar stores. A lot of famous guitarists have gone there and bought stuff. I actually bought a bass there years ago, and they supplied a lot of the guitars in it. So probably that famous scene that they're just talking about was probably a lot of the guitars that were from Norm's Rare Guitars. So if you ever get a chance, look them up. They're famous. They're out in the Valley. Got to check them out. Okay, number 10. A popular bar music venue in Milwaukee's East Side changed its name to Shank Hall after the fictitious Milwaukee location where the band appears midway through their fateful tour.
Yeah. Wow, I didn't catch that. Yeah. Shank Hall.
Next time I'm Milwaukee, I'm looking up Shank Hall, guys. You want to come with me?
Yeah, I'm in.
Now, because this is Spinal Tap, I have an 11, of course, the last bit of trivia here. This is the only film on IMDb with a rating of 11 instead of 10. Current rating is 7.9 out of 11. So if you go to IMDb Spinal Tap, most of them say till 10, but for Spinal Tap, they say 11. So there you go.
All right.
Yep.
All right, guys, let's go ahead and get into the categories here. Our favorite scenes and quotes, guys. Now, there's a lot. It's okay. Just give me a couple of your favorites. More opportunities will come up later for some of your other ones here. But let's go ahead and start with you, Bobby. I want to start. What are some of your favorite scenes and our quotes? And for the slideshow, I'll be showing some of the more famous ones. But give me what is some of your favorite scenes and or quotes.
Well, everybody kind of always goes to well, this goes to 11, right? But the two that really stand out to me is when they're doing the album reviews during the beginning of the film. And he talks about rock and roll creation, and he said, and something along the lines, created the earth and the heavens, and then he rested. But on what day did God create Spinal Tap, and couldn't he have rested on that day too? That kills me. And then it's a very simple one. It's a two-word review.
We're taking mine.
Sandwich review. Shit sandwich.
You can't print that. You can't print that.
No.
You can't print that.
So those two are the ones that I get the biggest laugh out of.
Nez, what about you, buddy?
That quote, the shit sandwich one, absolutely is one that throws me back. As far as a scene, though, it's when they are at Elvis's grave and he starts to sing Heartbreak Hotel, and then they decide in their like pretentiousness or whatnot that they're going to harmonize. And it sounds like shit. And then when they start to bicker, it's when Derek Smalls is like tells him to calm down because in reverence of the king.
You're in the presence of the king.
Right.
Okay,
And,
I need to tell you something real quick because I have a slide up right now. The scene where they're at Elvis's grave, they weren't actually there in Graceland. They redressed another outside location. I have actually been there, and there's a picture of me next to Elvis Aaron Presley's grave there at That is the actual location. That's what it looks like. If you're looking at the video, I took a selfie there, and they give you little headphones of the little tour and everything. And it's very like when you go there.
You didn't sing a song there, did you?
No, hell no.
Kevin, I have to say, I was there too. Back in 1996, when my wife and we weren't married yet, but we were driving to ASU, and we stopped at Graceland, and at his grave is when I broke down and cried.
Wow.
I cried.
I recommend this. If you do go to Graceland, you can buy a little bit more expensive ticket, and you can go across the street to the warehouse that has all of his cars, his vehicles.
Oh.
And you can also go onto his private jet and his private Learjet. So make sure if they still offer that, please check that out. Nice. Okay. Nez, sorry to interrupt you. Did you have any of your favorite scenes or quotes?
I shared them. Like, again, shit sandwich and the harmonizing.
All right, Mike, what about you?
I try to think of one that my friends and I, who all went and saw this, and we're all huge friends of them, who are my friends and big fans of the movie. One of the ones that I even talked to Bob about it today, is when Marty Di Bergi is interviewing their manager, and Di Bergi says, they used to play these arenas, and now they're playing in small nightclubs. And he said, "Well, do you think your audience is waiting?" And the manager says, "No, I think our audience is becoming more selective." So we say that. My friends and I have said that line hundreds and hundreds of times, especially when going to Pirate games, Pittsburgh Pirate games, and seeing the 150 people there, and say, "Wow, our audience is really becoming selective." And and then to go back to the album reviews, they review another album. Oh, it's Intravenous de Milo, right? And they go to this long diatribe of the sexuality, the childish sexuality and all this stuff and then at the end there's huge horrible review, and then they say, "Well, that's nitpicking, isn't it?" So my friends have always said that too. When something just when someone goes off on a tangent, you just say, "Well, that's really nitpicking, isn't it?" So those are my two favorite lines.
My quotes will come along later. You guys have said a lot of them, but my two favorite scenes is when they're all in the cocoons.
Yeah,
and Derek Smalls gets stuck in it, and they're using like a blowtorch, and then they all go back to their cocoons, and he finally comes out, and he's like, "Oh crap, I got to get back at it." And he sticks his arm in it, but he still doesn't break. He's still in it. He's going, "Yeah."
He gives the thumbs up, the fist up, yeah. And of course, Stonehenge, which Nez and I found out a while ago that it's actually based on a true story.
Yes, it is.
Stonehenge, which was Black Sabbath. Way after Dio.
Born Again.
Yeah, they made the mistake, and I think they wanted to put something, and they made the mistake, and instead of being super small, and there's a picture of it somewhere, but instead of being super small, it's monstrous.
Yes,
it's larger than Stonehenge, and they couldn't fit it into most of their shows. They couldn't fit it into the backdrop of the stage because they made it so huge.
Right.
I have to mention this too. First of all, when I went to England, I took a tour to Stonehenge, and I was there on a tour bus. And of course, it's really weird. Stonehenge is basically right by the main road. It's so easy to see. And and then there's like a parking structure, and then you walk to it. But of course, our tour guide had to make a Spinal Tap joke. It was hilarious. I got to talk about the famous metal detector scene real quick, because I felt like that is probably one of the more famous ones, and it got a lot of replay because they make a point to zoom in on Derek Smalls earlier in the movie, and you see this member there, and you're going like, "God damn, dude, really?" And there's a funny cut scene when there's another guy wrapping a cucumber, and he brings out a bigger one. It's really funny. But I had to mention.
Oh, Nigel and David were sitting in that restaurant, and they said that Marty said, "You have a lot of men at your shows and not a lot of women." And they said, "Well, the women see us with our tight pants, and we have armadillos in our trousers, and it scares them off."
I could never figure out. I mean, it's funny, but I don't know why he would keep that in his pants going through security. I mean, there's no show, you're not doing anything, but you still have it. I just don't know why you wouldn't get
what I'm trying to figure out during that scene is like, you see the two actresses that are the security guards doing the wand waving. You see the guy in the back the back behind them is laughing, and you hear people laughing behind the camera. Are those people like laughing because they're supposed to and he got caught and it's funny, or is it the cast and crew like they just lost it?
Well, there's another throwaway line that always got me in that is when she bought the wand him and she says, "Do you have any metal plates or screws?" And he says, "Not that I'm aware of."
Yeah.
All right, guys. The next segment is our cast and crew discussion. I want to kind of just, tell me about, your favorite cast and crew in this. Of course, we got Michael McKean as David St. Hubbins, Christopher Guest as Nigel Tufnell, Harry Shearer as Derek Smalls, Rob Reiner as Marty. We got Tony Hendra as Ian Faith. We have R.J. Parnell, who is Mick Shrimpton, the main drummer that we see through most of it before he blows up. David Kaff as Viv Savage, the keyboard player. We have June Chadwick as Janine, aka Yoko. Bruno Kirby is the limo driver. Ed Begley is John Stumpy Pepys, the drummer from the 60s.
That was funny.
We got Fran Dresser as Bobby Fleckman. We had appearances by Dana Carvey, Billy Crystal, Howard Hessman, Paul Shortino as Duke Fame. He was in the King Cobra band, and also he sung for Rough Cut. And Paul Schaefer's in there as well. I mean, Angelica Houston, Fred Willard, huge list of who's who. Mike, start with you. Your thoughts on the cast?
Yeah, I mean the Fred Willard stuff is so amazing too. When he's telling them, we're gonna go. I'm making about 1,600 hours, and you'll go on in about 1,700 hours. And Derek Smalls says that'll be about 37 hours from now. And so I mean, there's just so many people who just were, even Billy Crystal was great in it for, he was in it for 5 seconds.
Yeah,
he was great, as he says, mime is money. And there's just so many.
Dana Carvey was the other mime.
Dana Carvey, do the dead bird.
There's extended scenes with those guys in it, just so you know.
Yeah. So I mean, Bruno Kirby was a great scene as limo driver. It just, I mean, you just go down the line of just so many great things.
I forgot to mention this in my research, and it's kind of important. There is actually a bootleg extended cut somewhere out there. Maybe it's on YouTube. I didn't search for it. Of all of the deleted scenes put back into the movie. So it's almost like a 2.5, 3 hour movie.
Oh, wow. I'd watch that.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. All right. Bobby, tell me about your thoughts on the cast and crew.
For me, my two favorite guys are David St. Hubbins and Nigel Tufnell. I've always been a Michael McKean fan. And I'm going to show you something really cool. I was trying to find my Spinal Tap soundtrack. I couldn't do that, but I did find this. I have a Lenny and the Squig Tones LP.
Nice.
No way!
Yeah.
Nice.
There we go. And Michael McKean and David Lander. But check this out. On the inside cover, if you look, there's Christopher Guest as Nigel Tufnell.
Nice!
Wow.
That is so cool.
Yeah. So for me, it was those two guys because they improv off each other so well. And they're just so deadpan funny. And for me, they're my two favorite characters. I can identify with them. Even though I'm a drummer, I identify with the guitar players.
Nice. Naz, what about you? Cast and crew.
I mean, another reason the film's endured is because of the talent that was in it, and it's what lent to its convincing nature. I'm with Bob. I mean, the band itself, the three guys, their interplay and the organic nature of how they approached what it would be like to be in a rock act is phenomenal. But I've also enjoyed those guys in other Christopher Guest films, like A Mighty Wind.
Yeah.
There they are once again as a band of a totally different genre. It's equally as funny. I know it's not as popular, but I just really like Christopher Guest films, and those guys just keep showing up again. And Fred Willard, of course, in like Best of Show and
Best of Show is amazing.
Waiting for Guffman and types of things. I mean, they're just really, really great, which has me so looking forward to the next installment of Spinal Tap. Yeah.
Mike.
Yeah, even For Your Consideration is even great too. That kind of gets overlooked because it's not in that mockumentary kind of feel, and that but it is, but it isn't. I mean, it's just I just can't wait for the next one. I just hope it's just not a disappointment.
We'll touch on that. We'll touch on that later. Yeah, I'm with you there. Obviously, Michael McKean, Christopher Guest, great in this. I need to give a shout out to two people in this movie. First of all, Harry Shearer is Derek Smalls. He's kind of like the guy that's trying not to make waves, but he's such a character. I love his look. He's hilarious. He's just like, he's trying not to get in the middle of things. He's just kind of there for the ride, but still showing up and doing what he needs to do. He knows how to not piss people off. I think he's great, and he had some great moments. And I want to give a shout out to Tony Hendra as Ian Faith, the manager, because I feel like however they did their research on a manager of having to like break the bad news of stuff that goes wrong, trying to work with hotels and all that crap. I assume that they had to talk to a real manager to kind of get an idea on that.
Or they just talk to their managers.
He kind of reminds me of was it Peter Grant who managed Zeppelin?
Mm.
Yeah.
And like, he was that big. I mean, he wasn't super big like Grant, but he's carried that big cricket bat.
Yeah.
For I guess intimidation purposes. I don't know. I kind of always thought that was kind of the guy they were going for. I don't know.
I got a picture here on YouTube of Spinal Tap in '84 and in 2022 when they showed up for the I think it was the Tribeca film thing there. And we'll get more into that later. But yeah, it's just this movie just had a great cast. I did want to show the rest of the people here, of course. Bruno Kirby and of course Paul Schaefer and all of them that had very memorable moments in the film. Just a great cast. And by the way, I don't know if you guys know this, I'm a big fan of The Nanny, and Fran Dresser brought back Bobby Fleckman and brought her into an episode where she played both Fran and Bobby Fleckman in an episode.
Bobby Fleckman, Bobby Fleckman. Come on,
Fleckman.
All right, guys. So the next segment we have is a fun one. It is called It's called Ocean's 11. Do you think we need one more? Now, go back to 1983 when this was being filmed and it came out in 84. You could put it in the time frame of 84. Around that time, the American metal scene. Who would you like to have added to this cast? And, in this situation, we probably would have liked to have added a real rock star. Maybe they couldn't afford them or whatever. But just for fun's sake, who would you have liked to get into this film? And I got a couple of options. I'm going to show them on the screen right here. If you guys got other ones, let me know. I would love to have seen Quiet Riot make an appearance because they're blowing up with the biggest heavy metal album. Obviously, Ozzy Osbourne because he's Ozzy. And because their stage show is so theatrical, Ronnie James Dio and his theatrical stuff, it would be just like a no-brainer. Nez, I'm going to start with you. Who would you have liked to have seen make a cameo appearance, maybe playing themselves in Spinal Tap?
Yeah, I'm going with Peter Criss and Ace Frehley.
Nice.
And it's because they were at a Kiss for a couple of years at this point.
This is when they're taking the make off too, right?
Right. And so they would have just been enough of a household name, but I don't think they would have outshined Spinal Tap themselves necessarily. And I imagine them being like a drum tech and guitar tech for them, trying to help out.
Are you sure you want Ace Frehley being your guitar tech?
That's the point.
No, you do not. No.
I like that. That's a good suggestion.
He would say he invented tapping. It would be great.
All right, Bobby, who would you have liked to have seen in Spinal Tap playing themselves or another cast member?
That's easy. Bobby Durango.
I'm sorry. Wait, was he born yet? I don't know.
No, he was dead by then.
You know what? I haven't really given much thought to that. I know Nez would really like to see Bobby Durango there. But I thought I'm going to agree with Nez because I think that would be really funny to watch Ace do that. I don't have a preference, but I'm going to agree with him. Definitely Ace.
I think it would have been great to go with you, Nez, to have like Gene Simmons like talking about how to deal with groupies. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah. Kiss, man.
Yeah. Mike, what about you, man? Who would you like to see?
It all circles back to Kiss, doesn't it, Nez? It all circles back to Kiss. You know, I envision this sort of, you know, when they were talking to Duke Fang in the hotel lobby, I always envisioned, you know, David Lee Roth being in it.
Oh, yeah.
You know, as just sort of this godlike figure that they're trying to, you know, copy or sort of emulate. So not to go the pendulum swinging the other way of the Ace Frehley's out of Kiss and, you know, looking for work. Rather the David Lee Roth one where he's just coming through as a godlike figure and they're just sort of riding on his coattails. But I will say I would really like to see that all-female band that was opening up for them. I would make more about them. Yeah.
All right, guys, the next segment is a fun one here. We call this the Zoolander. They look so hot right now. Our favorite costume or fashion moment. And we had some interesting fashions in this movie. I'll throw some pictures up here. I think one of the things I saw a lot of people comment on in this Australian DVD was that famous skeleton muscle tee that Nigel have. Of course, you always had Derek Smalls in some type of bondage outfit. I love the flower people outfit that Michael McKean's character had. I think we had also too. What was it? The manager when he was getting mad and breaking up with the group, he had on that weird, like he was playing for Gryffindor outfit, you know. Mike,
he had a rugby shirt on. Yeah, he had a rugby shirt on.
Yeah, rugby shirt on. Mike, let's go to you. What? Who do you think had a good fashion scene?
So there's one scene where I believe they're doing Stonehenge, and they have those monk outfits on where they're they're saying those were really great too. I really like that outfit, and that's probably my favorite. And wishing that they would have did Janine's Signs of the Zodiac costumes. So those are probably my two favorite.
Nice. What about you, Bobby? Any costumes or outfits stood out for you?
I'm gonna go with Nigel's Norman's t-shirt.
Norm's Rare Guitars.
Yeah. I noticed that, and I thought that's a really cool shirt to be the typical shirt that a rock star would be wearing. And I really dug the shirt. I like the way it looks. So
I don't remember who had it, but I know like some 80s metal bands, hair metal bands had those shirts. And you can go to Norm's Rare Guitar and buy those. They have them there. So yeah, that's cool. Cool. What about you, Nez?
Oh, hands down, Derek Smalls lifting his look off of Manowar. I mean,
yes, absolutely. Yes.
It is just the cod piece, like everything about it. Like I really feel, I want to think that they looked at Manowar album covers, you know, from 82, 83 and said, this is going to find its way into our film. Because it's like those guys just look so freaking ridiculous. Like, you know.
Well said.
None of them else wore that, just him.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. The best part. Yeah. There was no cohesion.
No.
Like their stage, you know, so I like that.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
The only cohesion was the one Mike was talking about, where they're all wearing the robes.
Yeah. And when they did Give Me Some Money, didn't they all have the same outfit
on?
Yeah.
Good stuff there, guys. All right, guys. This is, of course, Couch Potato Theater. This is Spinal Tap here on the Fandom Podcast Network, and we are celebrating the 40th anniversary of Spinal Tap. We have more segments coming up, and usually I save this category for some of our action films because we get a lot of fight scenes. But you know what? When you're in a band and you're having a fateful tour in the U.S., you're going to have some fight scenes, and I threw some up here. Of course, we got, of course, the fight scene in the recording studio, and there's an extended version of this where they really go at it. And then you got Janine going up against, of course, the manager, and then, of course, when Nigel just has enough of it, throws his guitar on the stage, and he gives this disdain look to Janine. I want to get your thoughts on these scenes. Nez, let's start with you.
You know, my argument scene wasn't any of these featured, but it really is when they're trying to talk about the fallout of Stonehenge. And
Yes.
Yes.
And absolutely, when he says like our prop was in danger of being crushed by dwarves or something like that.
Yes.
And when he says like, you know, it's your job to not be as dumb as Nigel or whatever it is.
Right.
Nigel is. You're not as confused as Nigel is.
Right. And that scene really, I just think, is just so classic. And you can tell it's just very natural, completely ad lib. You couldn't write that. You could not write that in a script. And I think
the timing in there is perfect. When the manager says, let's not make a big deal out of this, he says, making a big deal out of it would have been a good idea.
Mike, was that your favorite? Do you have another favorite fight?
I'm gonna go with Ian and Janine. Because and I never could understand this. Maybe you could shed some light on this, Kev, when he calls her someone who's dressed like an Australian's nightmare, which I never could understand that line whatsoever.
You know, I'm married to an Australian, and I know some Australian musicians. I should probably ask about that because I don't know. Because just so you guys know this, and because I've married an Australian, I've found out that a lot of pop culture, when it comes to movies, pop stars, rock stars, products, Australians and the UK share a lot of that. Okay, and they're very invested in each other, and therefore a lot of famous people that didn't quite break over here in the States, like Robbie Williams didn't really break over here in the States like he has over there. That's probably where some of that comes from. And Susie Quattro, who is born and bred in the United States, Detroit, we know her as Leather Tuscadero in Happy Days, never hit it huge over here, but is enormous and sells out arenas, headlines arenas in and around that area. So anyway, I'll have to ask around on that.
Good for her.
Yeah.
Oh, who have I not asked yet? Bobby, what's your favorite fight?
I would say I'm going to go to the Stonehenge fight between Ian and Janine, but it's not them fighting. It's the back and forth. It's after he runs out, he says, "I quit," and they cut to Derek, and Derek says, not to find a point on it, but are we doing Stonehenge tomorrow?
Yeah, we're not doing Stonehenge tomorrow.
That's the one that I And he goes,
I bring up a practical question.
Stonehenge.
That is good stuff right there, guys. All right.
It became our comedy number.
So there's another segment that I usually save for our action movies that, require a lot of violence and deaths and stuff like that. And we call it the Sean Bean Award for best death scene. However, I thought for this one, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the drummers because if we didn't see their death scenes, we heard about it. And I'm going to list these off here. I went on to Wikipedia and other things, and I found a list of all the drummers, and it looks like there's about 9 or 10 of them that go up through 2008. Okay. And those are John Stumpy Pepys from 64 to 66. This is, of course, the Ed Begley Jr. one that we see. Died in a bizarre gardening accident that the authorities said was best left unsolved. Yeah, I'm going to come back to that later. Then we had Eric Stumpy Joe Childs from 66 to 67. He choked on vomit of unknown origin, perhaps, but not necessarily his own, because you can't really dust for vomit. And then there was Peter James Bond from 67 to 77, spontaneously combusted on stage during a jazz festival on the Isle of Lucy. Then in the film, we see Mike Shrimpton through most of it, and he was the drummer from 77 through 82, and he just exploded on stage. And then at the end, he's replaced by Joe Mama Besser from 1982, claimed he, quote, couldn't take this 4/4 shit, according to an MTV interview with Spinal Tap in November of 1991. He disappeared along with the equipment during their Japanese tour. He's either dead or playing jazz. Then there's Richard Rick Shrimpton from 82 to 99, allegedly sold his dialysis machine for drugs, presumed dead. Then there's Sammy Stumpy Bateman from 99 to 2001, died trying to jump over a tank full of sharks while on a tricycle in a freak show. This is what it says. It's on the internet. It's true. Scott Skippy Scuffleton, 2001 to 2007, Fate Unknown. And the last one from 2007 to 2008, Chris Papa Cadu, eaten by his pet python Cleopatra. Plus 9 other drummers at various times, probably between 70 and 81, all of whom are dead. And a realistic note, Rick Parnell, who played the drummer Mick Shrimpton in This Is Spinal Tap and later toured with the band, died. He was 70. Yeah, this was back in 2022. The actor Harry Shearer announced the news on Twitter on Sunday, writing, Rick Parnell, our drummer in This Spinal Tap, passed away today. No one ever rocked harder. So, yeah. So, guys, I want to get your thoughts on the dead drummers here. Bobby, let's start with you.
I'm going to go with Mick Shrimpton, because you knew it was going to happen. You knew it was going to happen, and you're waiting for it to happen. You just didn't know how it was going to happen.
Yep.
So when they get that to the tour in Japan, and he just immediately explodes right from the cut, it was hysterical, and then right into Joe Mama. So for me, it's definitely Mick Shrimpton.
What about you, Nez?
I think it's not lost on music fans that when this movie came out, within 3 years, we lost the Beach Boys' Dennis Wilson, John Bonham, who died of vomit after a night of vodka, and of course Keith Moon.
Yeah.
So I like the first one because sometimes if you overplay a joke or you run it for too long, it kind of loses itself. So they do it the one time of the, best left unsolved. And that would have just been funny in and of itself because it's so preposterous to say something like that. But it just works that it's so well when the camera slowly pans over to Derek Smalls as he starts to tell the story of the vomit and then the, spontaneous combustion. And it's ridiculous. But as a viewer, you realize a lot of famous drummers just died within 3 years upon the release of the film. But,
isn't that weird? There you go.
It is. But
art imitating life right there, or right. Life imitating art.
Yeah. So I'm going with the first one because it's just so ridiculous to say best left unsolved.
Mike.
Yeah, I agree with him. John Stumpy Peeps. Great drummer, great look. They said great look. And the thought of a police officer coming up to people and saying, "We're not going to solve this one. It's best left if it's completely unsolved." Right? It's just so ridiculous. And then, of course, like Nez said, when they pan over to Derek Smalls, and he has this sort of very, he's smoking a pipe, and he's very sullen. And he's like, well, the official word, the official word is he choked on vomit, somebody else's vomit. It's so perfectly done because you can see he's really pained over it. So those two are my favorite.
I'm gonna go. I gotta go. Okay, the John Stumpy Peppies, of course. Ed Begley Jr. I mean, you look at this guy; he looks like a clean-cut kid, right? And it's the bizarre gardening accent. And I'm going to come back to that later, but that just cracked me up. And then Joe Mama Besser, who just comes in right in Japan, and then I'm guessing, did he piss off the Yakuza while in Japan? They just got. He's tired of this 4/4 shit. What was he getting into? I don't know.
He's playing jazz,
All right, guys, let's talk about the main segment here. We got to talk about the music, and this is the Kenny Loggins or John Williams best use of music or song in this movie, and we have to spend a lot of time on this, guys. And I want to start, of course, talking about the soundtrack itself. But before we actually start talking about it, I did want to lay down kind of a little timeline of notes I was taking while I was watching this film, so you can kind of get an idea of what was happening and when. So. I'm saying these take place in 84 because the film came out in 84, but it was probably more 82, 83. So the first song we get live that them singing is Tonight I'm Gonna Rock You. And that's, of course, with Nick Shrimpton on guitars. And then it goes back to 65 where the Gimme Some Money song on the Pop, Look and Listen British TV series. And that's with Ed Begley Jr. as John Stumpy Peppies. Then you come back to current day in Philadelphia at Fidelity Hall where they're playing Big Bottom. The Boston gig was canceled because it's not a big college town.
Not a big college town. No, I wouldn't worry about it. It's not a big college town.
Yeah.
Now, I think this was in Atlanta or before, because they were in an Atlanta convention. By the way, this is all filmed in Hollywood. So I was recognizing all the LA buildings where they play Hellhole. And then the Memphis show is canceled. Then they go and play on radio on the radio in the hotel. You hear Spinal Tap as the Tinsmen, and they're playing Cups and Cakes.
Yeah.
And that's Harry Shearer, by the way, on the radio, playing the radio guy, which is interesting. Then they go to Graceland and basically make Elvis roll over in his grave while they can't sing Heartbreak Hotel. And by the way, they did that song because that was the only song they could get the rights for. Interesting.
Wow.
Then they do the travel back to 67 where they're live on Jamboree Bop American TV show where they're listen to the flower people. Yeah. And that's where we had Peter James Bond on drums from 67 to 77. And then you go back to current day. They're at the famous Shank Hall, Milwaukee, which now exists as a bar apparently in Wisconsin, where they rehearse Gimme Some Money and then perform live Rock and Roll Creation. And of course, this is where the famous Janine shows up, David St. Hubbard's girlfriend, and the Smell the Glove album shows up. And also Derek Smalls gets stuck in the cocoon pop. Then Nigel starts playing piano for Marty, and that ends in the Lick My Love Pump scene. Then I believe this is somewhere in Chicago or prior to that, they play Heavy Duty. And this is followed in Chicago followed by the album signing where no one shows up. Then they're at the Xanadu Star Theater in Cleveland, Ohio, where the band gets lost backstage, but there's no performance.
Yeah.
And then we get Nigel performing his guitar solo with his feet and violin. And I don't know if you guys notice this, but when he picks up the violin, he actually tunes the violin.
Yeah, that's the greatest. Like he looks at it all upset, like, oh, this is out of tune. Like,
and then in 84, we probably get the most famous one, and that is in Austin, Texas, the famous small Stonehenge performance scene. Then the next live performance is Sex Form, performed at the Seattle, Washington Lindbergh Air Force Base. Original gig at the arena fell through, and this is where Nigel storms off stage and quits the band. And then this is where we get the new version of Nigel-less Spinal Tap, where they're playing at Themeland Amusement Park Amphitheater in Stockton, California, where they get the lower billing below the puppet show. This is the actual amphitheater that's at Magic Mountain just north of LA, and I've been there several times. And this is where they call themselves Spinal Tap Mark II and play some weird jazz fusion. And you see guys in the band with thumbs down.
Yeah. There's only about like 50 people there anyway.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And then they have the montage of the last LA show in Japan where they play Tonight I'm Gonna Rock You Tonight, where Nigel rejoins the band. Rick Shrimpton, of course, explodes on stage, and Joe Mama Besser soon takes over. So say all that to say this, guys. Now that you have a fresh idea and the listeners and the viewers know, I want you to tell me what your favorite songs are and performances are in the movie of those songs. And I'm going to start with you, Bobby. You're our new guest here. The songs that are on the soundtrack are Hellhole, Tonight I'm Gonna Rock You, Heavy Duty, Rock and Roll Creation, America, Cups and Cakes, Big Bottom, Sex Farm, Stonehenge, Gimme Some Money, Listen to the Flower People. And then they have a 2000 CD bonus tracks of Christmas with the Devil and Christmas with the Devil scratch mix. All right. Lay it on me, Bobby.
All right. Definitely my favorite song off the soundtrack is Sex Farm.
Yeah. Explain yourself, Bobby.
Well, Sex Farm for me, I love the chorus. I like the guitar chord progression. And I'm not a guitar player, but I just like the sound of that. And that's the song that made me want to go buy the soundtrack because I wanted to hear the rest of it.
You wanted to buy the Sex Farm album.
I said, and when I lived in Maine at the time, so it wasn't easy. I had to go to a music store. I had to drive 20 miles to a music store and then order it, and then it would come in.
Did you make sure Sex Farm was on it before you ordered it?
Yeah. So for me,
Oh,
it's Sex Farm, and because I wanted to hear the rest of it, and I wanted to hear the, that whole thing put together the right way without that airport noise and airfield noise and stuff like that.
That's good stuff. All right.
And
Okay.
and I think probably Hellhole.
All right.
Yeah, I like because of the lyrics. The lyrics.
Nez.
I am going Sex Farm as well. I mean, because the lyrics, like the line, crouching in your pea patch, plowing through your bean field, planting my seed. And what I think about,
I don't know if I gave you clearance to read that live, but I'm glad you did.
Because the thing is, it put me in mind of Steven Tyler lyrics when he's like, you ain't seen nothing till you're down on a muffin.
Yeah.
And then years later in Love in an Elevator, he's like, and kiss your sassafras.
Yes.
And it is just like they were visionaries with their filthy lyrics. And
they were.
As a side note, for me to get the lyrics, when I looked them up, Spinal Tap actually put out a thing saying you could find this, telling Donald Trump's not allowed to use sex form at his rally. They issued a cease and desist to Trump.
I knew I had you on this podcast for a reason, Nez.
That
was
fantastic.
All right, Mike. What about you? What are your favorite songs and performances?
Although I do like the lyric in Sex Farm, it says, "Sex Farm woman, I'll rake and hoe you down." So I really liked Tonight I'm Gonna Rock You, but I also liked Heavy Duty. The line says, "Heavy duty brings out the duty in my soul." There's all these sort of throwaways, like these little, when you hear it, you say, "What did he just say?" But my absolute favorite performance is Jazz Odyssey. I mean, it's just because when it's going, it sounds awful, and he looks over and he says, "Derek Smalls on the bass, he wrote this." He was both giving him credit and blaming him at the same time. If you don't like this, he wrote it. Which I always thought Jazz Odyssey was my favorite. The whole thing. I mean, I liked it better than Stonehenge, and I watched it recently on YouTube. And I looked at the comments, and in the middle of that song, somebody plugs in an amp. Like you can hear like a burp, and they do, like somebody plugs in a guitar, and it's like it's sort of a throwaway that I never noticed. And I'm thinking, yeah, who's plugging in during this? That's middle.
Funny. Oh my God! Give me another reason to watch this movie, Mike.
Yeah,
during Jazz Odyssey.
Playing Jazz Odyssey, yeah.
I'll have to watch that.
You hear someone plug in like a guitar, like right in the middle of it, and you're thinking, who's plugging in?
That's great. That's improvised right there.
Yeah.
So my favorite is Big Bottom, because who came up with the idea to have three basses going on at the same time in a song? And what's so funny is, and I'm going to take you back, I think it's to the 90s, guys. Do you remember a British band called Ned's Atomic Dustbin?
Yes.
They were famous for having two bass players in that band. And when they came on, I'm like, are they trying to do some Spinal Tap here? What are they doing? And I actually like the groove of that song, and it's genius. And also too, I just feel like, this is like Derek Small's moment to really kind of like play bass among everyone else. I love the idea of a song and the lyrics of Big Bottom, Girlfriend's Got 'Em, and you have three basses backing this up. Now, I do have some trivia notes regarding some of these songs in pop culture. Gimme Some Money was featured in the 1991 comedy film Don't Tell Mama the Babysitter's Dead. You guys remember that movie?
Yeah.
By title, never thought.
Yeah.
The song Tonight I'm Gonna Rock You Tonight is featured on the video game Guitar Hero 2. When played as the encore song at the end of the careers mode second tier, the in-game band's drummers spontaneously combust upon the song's completion. A direct reference, of course, to this is Spinal Tap. Now, I don't remember this. I don't remember that I've seen these guys play live. I would have loved to have seen this. The Seattle grunge band Soundgarden covered the song Big Bottom several times at their early live shows, documented on their live video Louder Than Live, as well as on their Netherlands release of their 92 Rusty Cage single. Did you guys remember this at all?
No.
But I do remember Spinal Tap playing at like Glastonbury or something, and everybody came out. There was like 15 bass players playing Big Bottom. It was like I think Jason Newsted was in there. There was a bunch of I think Metallica, for some reason, everybody in Metallica was in it, and they all played bass on it. So
I feel like there needs to be a Guinness Book of World Records at some arena with everyone playing that song and playing bass. That needs to happen because I've seen that with guitars and drummers and stuff like that. Stonehenge was featured in the 2006 Supernatural season 2 episode Simon Says. In early 2007, American Express Small Business Services used "Give Me Some Money" with vocals as background music on the television ad. And I mentioned this earlier, at the Live Earth concert during summer of 2007, Spinal Tap performed Big Bottom at Wembley Stadium. This was a packed stadium, guys, with members of many of the other acts from the festival, including members of Beastie Boys, Metallica, Foo Fighters, and many others.
That's the one
all playing bass guitars. Their set also includes Stonehenge and Warmer Than Hell.
Yeah, that's the one that I saw where they all played there. There must have been 15 people playing bass then.
Yeah. All right. I want to talk about some of the albums that they showcased in this movie. And I have some, I'm guessing, either fan-made art. And then, of course, we have the Black Album, the Smell the Glove. And I have a picture here of what they wanted, but this is what they got. And, of course, there's little issues with that. Bobby Fleckman says, you put a greased naked woman on all fours with a dog collar around her neck and a leash and a man's arm extended up out there holding onto a leash and pushing a black glove to her face to sniff it. You don't find that offensive at all? This is 1982, Bobby. Come on. And then, of course, we have Spinal Tap, Intravenous de Milo, and Spinal Tap Shark Sandwich that is mentioned, guys. And we've talked about, the shit sandwich and, all the crap. And isn't that nitpicking? I want to ask you guys, if you could actually own one of these albums with all the songs on it, with the original covers, what would it be? Mike, start with you.
No doubt, Shark Sandwich.
Shark Sandwich.
No doubt. I
want the Shark Sandwich t-shirt too. That'd be
Shark Sandwich t-shirt would be sweet.
Do you want the Shark Sandwich with the optional liner notes with the critics mention on it?
No, I just want the original Shark Sandwich. There's sharks in the white bread. I think there's olives on the plate. I mean, it's just fantastic. It's fantastic.
What about you, Nez?
Absolutely smell the glove. And the reason is first and foremost, I think like that cover, when they're making an issue out of it, it makes me think of the Scorpions records, like, Animal Magnetism, as well as Love Drive and In Trance of the woman straddling the guitar. I really felt like they were poking fun at the Scorps when they did this. But also it would be years later when Open Up and Say Ah was banned, like that cover of the extended tongue.
Yeah.
So I just think it's totally in keeping with the, sexist art that was going on at the time. And I think there would be a collector's item value to Smell the Glove. Absolutely.
This would be like the band version that, like, remember the original Guns N' Roses robot raping cover that you can't, that they had to change.
Yes. And of course the actual issue that they did is like, kind of mocking AC/DC's Back in Black.
Yeah.
And that type of thing. So I think
when Metallica released theirs, did they not did they put the little snake on there for a reason so you could see something? Did they have that conversation? Like, isn't this like Smell the Glove?
They did something. I was mad at Metallica for doing that. I think, AC/DC owned the black cover, but I'm Smell the Glove anyway.
Bobby, what about you? Which one do you want to own?
Well, the one I would want to have would be Shark Sandwich. Simply because I think it's more recognizable, and I really dig the cover. I mean, nobody's really seen Smell the Glove, but I understand why Nez would pick that because that's the one that kind of stands out from the film that no one gets to see. But if I was going to pick one, I would take Shark Sandwich, and I want a t-shirt too. I want a Shark Sandwich t-shirt.
I am with you guys. Shark Sandwich. I want that album. I want the I've seen t-shirts. You can buy t-shirts with this.
I'll have to look for that one.
Yeah, I would love that because it's I think the cover alone is just fantastic.
Yeah. I think me and Bobby and Nez should all buy that and wear it on the same day.
Please do.
We could do that.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So Spinal Tap got back together in 92 and released Break Like the Wind. I remember that album. I just don't remember the songs on it. And then of course they had Back from the Dead in 2009. Did you guys ever see those albums all or listen to them? Do you remember?
I listened to Break Like the Wind. There was one song on there like called the History of Rock, the History of Roll. That wasn't a bad song. And I remember Break Like the Wind too. But I don't remember Back from the Dead. That one I missed.
I don't either. Yeah.
They kind of like
guys, so
under the radar.
Yeah.
So back in 2018, I think I was at a Best Buy or something. There was some promotion going on, and there was a bunch of freebies. The radio station was giving some stuff out, and they were saying, "Hey, come up here and grab something." And there was only one copy of this album, and I'm like, "What? WTF?" And that was Derek Smalls released a solo album called Smalls Change. Meditations upon Aging. The debut album formerly of the band formerly known as Spinal Tap. And Harry Shearer went full on and did a Derek Smalls solo album. And I just want to listen to some of the tracks here. We have the overture, or as he calls the opener, Rock and Roll Transplant, Butt Call, Smalls Change, Memo to Willie, It Don't Get Old, Complete Faith, Faith No More, Gimme Some More Money, MRI, Hell to Pay, Gimme the Gash, and I think this is Mike's favorite song. She Put the Bitch in Obituary, and When Men Did Rock. And I just finished listening to this album for the first time.
Oh, you listened to it?
The picture that is up here was my actual sealed copy. I'd never listened to it, but I decided to listen to it while I was finishing up these notes. It's very produced. It's got some interesting guest stars on it. Taylor Hawkins and Chad Smith both guested on drums on these songs, and had some other people on here as well. He got a lot of people to do these songs, but it comes across very, and especially with his voice, it's very gravelly. It kind of feels like it feels like a Disney cartoon villain. I feel like it would be a really fun one-man show play if you were to do this and show Derek Smalls in the life of him outside Spinal Tap. Did you guys know this existed, Mike?
No. I mean, I'm dying to hear she puts the obituary song. I'm dying to hear that. I mean, I'll maybe listen to it on the way to work one day this coming week.
David Crosby lends voice to it before he passed away. Paul Schaefer was on this as well. I mean, he Phil X, guitar player. I mean, he really gets some people in on this to do this.
I read that David Crosby died of embarrassment after after being on this album. There's I mean, and he gets like an orchestra in a couple of these songs. He went all on this. But anyway, being a Spinal Tap fan, it's nice to have. I did open up and listen to it. But check it out. I'm sure it's on YouTube somewhere. I think my favorite is Butt Call, because his lyrics are so literal in the song. All right, guys, let's hit our next category here, and this one's a fun one. So I want to take you back to Spinal Tap as it's being filmed, and our next segment is: if you were a non-speaking extra on set, what scene would you want to be in? I have a picture of a few here. The press junket scene is very funny, and I would love to have been in the audience during the cocoon scene. But I want to get you guys take. Let's start with you, Bobby. What scene would you have liked to have been an extra of in Spinal Tap? And keep in mind, we're all old enough to where we could have been an extra.
Yeah. I would probably think there's two to pop into my head. One is the opening night press junket you're talking about, where people are milling around, and you kind of like you're hearing the conversations going on. That would be a really good scene to be in, because there's a lot of funny stuff going on in there, and trying to keep a straight face would be difficult, more than likely. The other one, I'm going to go back, Sex Farm, because I want to hear the song. So maybe
you'd want to be at the military base.
Yeah, I want to be at the military base listening to Sex Farm. Probably be the only one, listening to it, saying, keep going. So that yeah, that's what you need, a guy in a uniform jumping up and down.
There you go. All right, what about you, Nez? Which scene would you want to be an extra in?
Trying to find the stage door in Cleveland. That would be it, because I wouldn't.
Where would you be? Just like a non-speaking extra in one of the hallways, walking by, carrying some.
Well, how they had like the band, but you assume like there's the documentary like camera guy there.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so it's kind of like part of the entourage that's getting like hyped up and just like tripping over mops and that type of stuff. That would be, and again, trying to really maintain that enthusiasm of going rock and roll and hello Cleveland, and just
that's classic.
And
Mike, what about you?
Again, that's hysterical. The guy giving directions.
I'm thinking the pool scene at the end, when they at the end of the tour celebration, where Nigel's out of the band now, and Derek and David St. Humans are talking about that they envy themselves. They said, "I envy us," and they said that they were, they're finally going to have time to write their musical on Jack the Ripper. Saucy Jack, right? You're a naughty one, Saucy Jack. And I would love to have been on the rooftop in LA, listening to them pine about their next venture, and they also it just fit perfectly.
Nice. Yeah, being in a concert scene would be great, but yeah, there's a lot to choose from. Thinking back on it, I would like to have been one of the guys, one of the 50 people that were watching them do their weird jazz thing, and I'd go, "You suck," but then
give them the thumbs down.
I'd have to do the thumbs down because I can't speak. So yeah. Okay. One of the segments we have here is an interesting one here. I want to talk to you guys about this. This is the Titanic "I'm King of the World" career moment. This is where, as the time this movie's coming out or being made, was there an actor in this movie at the top of their career? Was there anything else from this movie that was trending, newsworthy, tabloid popular when this movie was released? Maybe an apex moment for someone in front of the camera, behind the camera. You could make an argument for, the guys in the band, Michael McKean and Christopher Guest and those guys. They went on to do other things as well. But I want to kind of mention real quick, I think the person really that got the big push out of this, of course, was Mr. Marty Di Bergi himself. Of course, we all know him as Rob Reiner. He was, of course, was it Meathead on All in the Family? Kind of got his start there. But let's talk about obviously he's had some famous roles acting wise, Wolf of Wall Street, of course, When Harry Met Sally. But I want to talk about the directing stuff here, guys. So he does Spinal Tap, right, in 1984. Then he does a very underrated movie called The Sure Thing, which is one of my wife's favorite movies. And then he does Stand By Me, The Princess Bride, Harry Met Sally, Misery, A Few Good Men, American President, Ghost of Mississippi. That is a huge run right there. Absolutely. A lot has to do with this film and getting him going. I want to get your guys' thoughts on this. Do you think that he is the king of the world moment in this, or is there someone else that steps out to you? Mike, I'm going to go right back to you.
He definitely is. I saw an interview about him recently where he was talking about Spinal Tap, and he said that, before this came out, he was still Meathead on All in the Family. And this role really broke him away from being called Meathead. He said people still call him that to this day, but when he directed this movie, it put his career on another trajectory, and from obviously those lists of movies that he directed after this.
Well, let me also ask you this, because I want to also have Nez and Bobby talk about this too. The other thing too, I think that got a push out of this movie was just rock documentaries in general, or mockumentaries. I felt like then they just started coming out after this. Would you agree with that too?
I mean, Christopher Guest is in this, and then he did all the mockumentaries, the Waiting for Guff Beans, the Best in Show, the Mighty Wind. Yeah. He did all those, and then you got to go down The Office and Parks and Rec and Modern Family, are all from that same sort of thing that this started. And he's sort of, he's the king of the world of that he created the genre.
Yeah.
What about you, Naz? What do you think?
I can't disagree with you guys. I think the film, when you list all the films he did afterward, he's no slouch. And I think what's also cool is that he wasn't like pigeonholed into it. Like he did. Like Stand By Me is so much different from that, as well as, and then A Few Good Men. And a little trivia that I'm sure Kevin knows is that Christopher Guest appears as the coroner in A Few Good Men.
Yeah.
And he testifies in court,
Not to mention being married to Jamie Lee Curtis. I mean, that guy wins on all accounts there.
Yeah. So, I just think that, as far as, like you said, the trajectory of his career, it was just, the sky became the limit. I think surrounding events, a lot of good albums came out that year, from Power Slave to The Last in Line to Out of the Cellar, 1984, Animalize, 84 was a big year for Spinal Tap and a lot
Sounds like you know something about hair metal. I should get you on that show.
Yeah, maybe. I've been hearing about, we could talk about Stay Hungry. That also came out in
84. Good stuff there. Bobby, what do you think?
I would definitely agree with what the other two guys were talking about, particularly since Stand By Me was definitely one of my favorite films of all time, coming from Rob Reiner, which it really resonated with me, being a kid who grew up in the late 60s, early 70s, who walked the railroad tracks with his buddies and did those types of things, and just kind of like was out in the woods running around and, doing knuckleheaded things. So for him, I think, again, it put him in another stratosphere. Michael McKean, he's kind of like, he's there, he's here, he's there. And Christopher Guest, he's here, he's there. But Rob Reiner, it just was a different level for him.
And he's found a good supporting role in movies. I should say, he still does that, which I like, but his movies are just so classic. And I was reminded of a podcast my buddy Kyle and I did for Culture Class several years ago, where we asked people on social media, what do you consider is a perfect movie? And we kind of gave our favorite perfect movies. And Princess Bride was at the top there. Another one was Galaxy Quest. Also Raiders of the Lost Ark. But I kind of feel bad I didn't mention Spinal Tap. Spinal Tap is a perfect movie. I felt that should have gotten in there. And then you think about it, it's done by the same, by Rob Reiner too. So it just takes me that, and as we've been talking about this, would you guys call this a perfect movie?
Yeah, it's perfect.
Yeah,
we've talked about this many times. We've talked about this, many times, and it would fit in that category.
I can't think of a scene that I would get up to go replenish my snack bowl.
I know, you got to pause the damn thing,
right? No, or a piss break. Like it really is. It's not one of those films.
Yeah, and it moves very quickly. It's like you just keep going with it,
You watch the credits because they're still playing scenes. It's genius, So yeah. Okay, guys. Next segment here we call the Aliens Nuke It from Orbit Hot Take. Do you have a hot take about this film? Maybe it's popular, maybe it's not popular. Maybe you might get some pushback on here. Before I give you my two hot takes, does anybody have one?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, what do you got, Mike?
So I actually saw them live at the Keswick, Nez, and they did songs from Spinal Tap.
You saw Spinal Tap live?
No, it wasn't Spinal Tap. It was Derek Smalls, Michael McKean, and Christopher Guest. And
I don't know if you know that, but that's Spinal Tap.
They didn't know, but they weren't billed as Spinal Tap.
Okay.
They played some Spinal Tap songs, and they played some Mighty Wind songs too. And my friends and I used to always argue about this, and I was lucky enough to ask them a question. So they had a Q&A at the end, and I was saving this for this podcast. So I always felt that one of the reasons that Nigel hated Janine is because he used to date her. And I asked them that, and the whole crowd went, ooh. I asked them, is the reason that Nigel hates Janine because he used to date her? And the whole crowd went, ooh, like they were interested. And Christopher Guest looked at me and said, it's only a movie, right? and I never got an answer.
I have one of my hot takes is related to that, and I'm going to come to that in a second.
So that was what I always thought, because I understand, she was not a great person, but and he did worry about her breaking up the band, but I always thought there was something else there.
Interesting. Okay, I'm going to come back to that because one of my hot takes is about Nigel. Nez or Bobby, do you have a hot take?
I don't know if this falls under like a true meaning of the term hot take of this, but something I always thought was curious about the film that they chose to not incorporate like drug abuse or alcoholism or anything like that into causing a problem in the band, when that was just so prevalent in almost every band.
Oh yeah, Coke was everywhere.
Yeah, and there's only one scene that I really saw where it's like girls like doing a bump of Coke, and I know the drummer seemed like he was having a good time, but it was like really interesting that they chose not to do that, and I think it was for the film's benefit in a way. Like if they had incorporated something like where one of the guys had some smack habit or was an alcoholic, I think it wouldn't have been as magical as it was.
Oh wow, that's a good take. I love that. That falls under hot take because I felt like they dealt more about the relationships, and I think that if they went down that rabbit hole, it might have gotten just kind of dirty as opposed to, fun. Does that make sense? I guess.
Yeah, probably unfunny. Yeah, it was a bit unfunny.
Yeah, that's a good call. Bobby, you got a hot take?
I don't really think I do. I mean, for me, the movie kind of modeled a lot of different things that come out of the rock and roll and its history. The Beatles, Yoko reference, and things like that there. But I don't really have one specific thing that really kind of jumps out at me.
Okay.
With all that, right. No.
Okay, so I got two. I'm going to touch on Nigel in just a second, but my first one is John Stumpy Pepes died in a bizarre gardening accident. The authority says was best left unsolved. This is, of course, Ed Begley Jr. Dude, I think John Stumpy was fucking murdered.
Well, yeah, obviously, but
I think he was murdered, guys, and that just rings police cover up. I think corruption. And I don't know if this is where the early guys, and keep in mind, I know the band's fake. I get it. But if you're going to play them as a real band, I'm going to look at it that way through that lens. And I just have a feeling like maybe they were finding their way of what not to do, what to do. And I think one of the band members probably killed him. I just want to throw that out there right there. Because I think David St. Hubbins was a little too like, yeah, let's not, the said this, huh? That's my hot take. I think that John Stumpy Pepe, I think he was murdered.
I don't think that any of them had the mental capacity to pull off a murder and get away with it, though.
I think they got some help, maybe. I don't know, but you're right.
Maybe from Janine.
Okay. Go ahead. Sorry, Bobby.
I was going to say, well, if you notice when they're talking about him and, what kind of drummer he is, they're really hesitant to get to the point where they say, well, good drummer. So, he dressed well. He was tall. I don't think they really liked him as a drummer.
Yeah.
And I think they didn't have the guts to fire him. So he
was murdered. I think he was murdered.
I can see that. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Mike, you touched on Nigel and the whole thing. I'm glad you asked that. I'm a little disappointed that you didn't get an answer because it might have made my take, irrelevant. But if you look at the film that we got and you don't look at all the scenes that they cut out, because all the scenes they cut out, they did show groupies and stuff like that. But if you watch Spinal Tap, all of the other band members have women hanging around them except for Nigel Tufnell.
Yeah.
So if you watch the film and you look at the friction, the disdain that he looks at Janine, was Nigel gay?
Yeah.
I think Nigel was gay.
He does have the herpes sore on his mouth, though.
You can get that.
Maybe he got it from Dave.
Yeah,
that's what
I'm just saying.
I always kind of thought that,
because I think that he has this relationship with David St. Hummins. Where he talks about how they get along and they're, blah, blah, blah. Of course they fight and stuff like that. But I think he was in love with him. If you don't look, and by the way, if you even on the tour bus, even Vic Savage has got a girl, the drummer's got a girl, everyone's got a girl, but except him, he's not hanging around with anyone. But there is some scenes where there is a groupie hanging around him. But then there's like this hot tub scene with Nigel and David St. Hummins sharing a hot tub together. So that's my hot take. I think if you just take the Spinal Tap movie for what it is, I think Nigel's gay. Just gonna say that. I think he's got a thing. I think he's been in love with David St. Hummins all these years. So,
okay, yeah. I can see that.
If you remember the bus scene after Janine joins the tour, everybody else is in the back, and he wants to leave her to go to the back.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and he wants to hang out with the group. He's not really not interested in hanging out with her. So I don't know, but I think it's a really interesting point.
Yeah. Okay. Next one we have is sequels, prequels, reboots, and remakes. And guys, we have Spinal Tap 2 coming. It is filming. This is completed. It is completed, and we're going to get it in 2025. Rob Reiner teases appearance by Paul McCartney and Elton John in This Is Spinal Tap sequel. And this article came out in July of this year, 2024, by Richard Richland. With the original celebrating its 40th anniversary, Reiner is currently wrapping production on a sequel featuring the original cast. And this picture here is at the Tribeca Film Festival in 2019, where they reunited. After being in business for almost 60 years, it appears Rob Reiner shows no sign of slowing down. Last year saw him debut his first ever documentary, at least his first real documentary, Albert Brooks, Defending My Life. He is currently finishing up production in New Orleans on This Is Spinal Tap sequel. In a recent interview with Deadline, Reiner discussed his shock over the documentary's Emmy nominations, as well as the status to a follow-up as a feature directorial debut and cult classic. Yeah, he goes in, he talks about his documentary with Albert Brooks. And then he talked about getting together. He says, quote, "We got everybody together and we added a couple of surprise guests." He said, "We have Paul McCartney and Elton John and Garth Brooks in Spinal Tap. And musicians also include Questlove, Trisha Yearwood, Chad Smith, and Lars Ulrich are planned to appear as themselves." And it was announced in 2022. And it looks like in 2023 is when he did that. And this time they have a little bit more budget at $22.6 million, and filming began March of 2024. And also, too, Drescher will be coming back as Bobby Fleckman. It was not revealed if Schaefer would return. So I want to ask you guys, it's too late. They've already filmed it. But if you would like to see some other people make cameos, I think there's going to be some surprises that we don't know about. I just want more metal people in this. I'm just going to put that out there. But who wants someone who wants to see some band or artist in this that hasn't been mentioned? Anyone?
Ooh.
Well, I mean, I'd like to see David Lee Roth.
Okay.
Dave, I mean, and Dave is, he's at the point of his career where he would fit into Spinal Tap perfectly. And coming back again, Ace Frehley would fit in there perfectly too. Ace would be.
Are we sure we want 2024 Ace Frehley?
Yes, we do.
We do want 2024 Ace.
Yes, there's no doubt about it. There, he'll be promoting his 10,000 Volts album, nonstop, and that would be great. I mean, you got to get sort of people who are kind of washed up.
Yeah,
that are playing the county fair circuit. So Ace would be perfect for that.
Nez?
Yeah. First and foremost, I think I think this could be successful because the material's there, as we've seen so many bands who are still playing. Like, I just heard Uriah Heep has finally announced they're going to retire, but they're going to go on a 2-year tour, and it's just amazing. Like, some of these bands that are in their 60th year, 50th or 60th year on the road. So
Scorpions is celebrating its 60th.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. So it's like they really are, again, imitating what life is at this point of just bands getting back out on the road, putting out some bullshit album and like touring on it. I guess as far as talent, I don't say this because I necessarily like them, but I could see like a David Coverdale like weaseling his way into something like this, especially with like
I like how you said weaseling his way.
Well, it's because I just didn't understand him as a sex symbol, and I think like the Slide It In album cover is kind of like Smell the Glove-ish and stuff.
Did you not see the tight pants and the teased hair? Come on, dude.
Oh man, I don't know, but I'm really looking forward to this. I think it's going to be a very fun film.
Bobby, what about you, man?
Well, I thought it was interesting that you said Lars Ulrich is going to be in it. I because I'm kind of really interested in how they're going to kill him off.
That would be that for me. That I would be running to the theater to see that.
All right, so not only
put 2 and 2 together there, man. That would be
not only
hilarious.
does he get killed off for Spinal Tap, now Metallica's out there. Got to find another drummer.
Oh my God, that's funny.
I think that's I'm going to go with that one.
All right.
Oh, that's good stuff there, man. I like that. Well, I hope that it's fun. I hope they get some fun surprises on there. I'm going to be there opening night, definitely. And maybe we'll have to cover it on some podcast. Maybe we'll have to talk about that. So.
There you go. The three of
us.
All
right. So because of this movie, we touched on it, how this probably really could have pushed the rockumentaries or mockumentaries into more of a popular thing. But of course, we did have one before that. Of course, that was the Ruddles, a really fun kind of spoof on that came out in '79, I think it was. That came out, of course, spoofing the Beatles. And then we rap music, of course, we had CB4, the movie in the 90s that came out. Now, I'm mentioning ones that are like fake bands, but also real bands that felt like Spinal Tap. We had Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story. We had Anvil, the story of Anvil. And by the way, Anvil is interviewed in this Australian edition talking about this movie and how they've had moments of Spinal Tap going on. And so I got to mention that. And then, of course, we also had Metallica, Some Kind of Monster as well. Nez, what is your favorite of these non-Spinal Tap, aka, and am I missing some? Let me know.
No, I mean, it's hard to call any of them like a favorite. But I will say I recently rewatched Some Kind of Monster, having seen that when it debuted in the theater. I saw it in Washington, D.C. At an indie place. And my perspective of that film has changed over the last 20 years. I don't like the album that they recorded, but it is just interesting to kind of watch it where I'm kind of older than I guess they were at the time that they made Some Kind of Monster. So just a different perspective on it. And I do think there's a lot of very embarrassing moments in there. Like, I don't know, an art sale of like,
yeah. What about you, Mike?
Story of Anvil. I love that movie.
That was good.
I just really loved it. I mean, the friendship between those two guys, it just I loved it. And they're going through.
They're a Canadian rock band that didn't quite hit.
No. And they're touring through Europe, and it's just one horrible experience after another. There's one scene where they're playing in front of maybe 4 people. I'm not kidding. Yeah. Maybe 4 people. Yep. And it looks like it's in someone's living room. And there's one guy in the front headbanging, and there's 2 other people who may have just stumbled upon the place. So they may have only had one person show up to the game. I love that movie, and just the fact that they just never give up, and their families are telling them it's over, and how they just like being with each other and playing music with each other. And I just feel it's a really heartwarming a movie. I really like that.
What about you, Bobby? You got a favorite of these?
Well, I've seen 3 of them. I didn't see Anvil, but I'm going to go with my Ruddles.
Ruddles, there you go. All you need is cash.
All you need is cash. But for me, the Ruddles were great because I'm a big Beatles fan, and I loved all the music and everything about it, and I thought it was really cool because they got some connection with Monty Python, who I really love too. But Dewey Cox, Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story is probably one of the funniest movies I've ever seen.
Nice.
And the music in it is great too.
I forgot to add one to the slideshow here, guys. It's in the notes, but I find it highly rewatchable because I find the pop music era genre hilarious, especially in the last 15, 20 years, is Pop Star Never Stop Stoppin' with the Lonely Island guys from Saturday Night Live. And it's basically kind of like a Justin Bieber, Timberlake type of character, and it's hilarious. I didn't put that on the slideshow, but that's one of my favorites. Out of these that we've shown there, I love the Dewey Cox one.
Yeah.
It's really good. Anvil's awesome as well, guys.
Can I give an honorable mention to the decline of the Western civilizations?
Yes. Well, that was like real.
Right.
That was real.
Right.
Yes.
You know,
the most iconic metal documentary out there. Yeah. That's a good part two, because part one was like the punk genre and stuff like that. So yeah. Okay. One last big question here, guys, as we wrap up the show here. The real life Spinal Tap stories. I pulled this off the internet here, and I found a Reddit link here and someone asked, in terms of imagery, theatrics, maybe even silliness and self-parody, which band is the closest to Spinal Tap, the real band? And the mentions that I'm going to pull the top mentions here on this Reddit thing here. Motley Crue, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Anvil, Kiss, Steel Panther, Black Sabbath, Saxon, Venom, Grateful Dead. They kept losing their keyboard players. The Darkness, The Who, Led Zeppelin, Judas Priest, Def Leppard, Iron Maiden, U2. Apparently they got stuck in a giant lemon.
They did.
Poison, Pink Floyd, The Wall, Twisted Sister, and then someone said every hair metal band. Now, before you answer, I did want to say that during this documentary on this Australian release here, someone was convinced that they actually said Saxon was one of the main influences for Spinal Tap.
Yeah,
but I want to get your guys' thoughts of what's happened over there. You could throw Guns N' Roses in there as well. What band do you think is the Spinal Tap real version? Bobby, you go first.
Well, I'm not as big metal guys as you guys are. So if I had to choose one for just from the ridiculous standpoint of their career, I would probably say Motley Crue.
Yeah. Yes.
That's what I would go with. They probably experienced a lot of that stuff before they hit it big. And then, even though they haven't lost many drummers, I would stick with Motley Crue.
Yes, that's a good one. What about you, Mike?
I'm gonna go Aerosmith. Just because of that time period of when it came out in '84, when their career was, Joe Perry had left the band, and or was this, I can't even remember. Steven left the band, and they came out with that Night in the Ruts or whatever it was, that horrible album. I think that they probably, like they said, Steven Tyler looked at that movie and it hit a little too close to home. I think it really was. Aerosmith at that time period was really Spinal Tap, but I did hear a lot of it that it was about Saxon.
Yeah, definitely. I think Darkness is just self-aware and they know whatever. But yeah, you love them for that. What about you, Nez? Which band or bands do you think are Spinal Tap?
Because Spinal Tap, they incorporated in their early years when they were going through like Beatles-esque and flower power and folk blues, and then would get into metal later on. I really thought of Dio, who was in Elf. He was in Elf in 1967 to 68. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Then he's in Rainbow, which is kind of a classic rock thing. And of course, Black Sabbath. Yeah. And then that's when
didn't Black Sabbath or Rainbow say he was too theatric,
Right. Yeah. And then he really let the dragon elf out when he put out Holy Diver and was like chasing dragons down on stage. And it really was like, he really just let it all out. And it's kind of like when you saw Spinal Tap of how, Derek Smalls is dressed like Manowar, but in the old grainy footage, he's just like this clean cut hippie. And I figured it's like it was like Dio's career in a way.
That's a good point too. I feel like if there's anyone that escaped the whole Spinal Tap thing, I mean, yeah, he left to go solo for a while, but he came back. I felt like Iron Maiden really did the shows right and showed you how to do it correctly. And then of course you're going to become a pilot and fly your own, band around in a jumbo jet worldwide tours as well. But yeah, I think Motley Crue, Bobby, would probably be my vote just for all the crap they did. They kind of set a precedence, and then you had the whole thing with Vince Neil, and you had the drummer and Pamela Lee Anderson, and Karabi coming in to replace, So yeah, definitely. All right, guys, I want to get your final thoughts. This has been Spinal Tap 1984. Excuse me. This is Spinal Tap 1984. This has been a lot of fun, guys. I never thought I'd have so much fun doing a podcast, and this definitely is that. Mike, I want to start with you. You're my co-host of the Hair Metal Podcast. Of course, I thought of you. You wanted to talk about this. You came to me. We're doing it. Your final thoughts on Spinal Tap?
No, I'm really looking forward to the sequel. I'm just hoping against hope that it's just even. I don't know if it'll ever be as good as the first one.
Probably won't, but I hope it's fun. Yeah,
even as close. And I'd love to keep chatting with you guys, but I have to go sit in the lobby and wait for the limo.
All right, Nez, your final thoughts on Spinal Tap?
I think again. I wonder if in another 10 years, when it's its 50th anniversary, if it'll be us 10 years older still talking about it, or
yes,
be our kids maybe finding it and talking about it, perhaps, like that type of thing. And I want to think in 40 years, people are going to find this podcast and they're going to talk about us talking about Spinal Tap.
They're going to podcast our podcast. Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up, because one of the cool things about being on YouTube and putting up videos is that one thing that us growing up as kids, a lot of the stupid shit we did wasn't on video. Yeah. But now we've got these videos and we're going to be immortal for a while, because people 500 years from now are going to find these videos going, what was this Spinal Tap thing? What the hell is this couch potato theater? Yeah. Who the hell is this Bobby guy? What's going on?
I hope they like what you see.
I'm talking about the other Bobby, not you, Bobby.
Oh, sorry.
Bobby, give me your final thoughts on Spinal Tap. And by the way, thank you for coming on, man.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's been great. Thank you. Final thoughts. The movie holds up. The movie holds up because the genre holds up. The music holds up. The whole idea, it still holds up because bands still go through this stuff, and it's a testament to filmmaking, and it's a testament just the whole music in general. So it holds up, and it will hold up.
Yeah, it's not going away. It's been recognized. People know what it is, and it's so rewatchable. It's amazing, and it was so much fun to see it on the big screen with people and laughing and talking about it afterwards. And it's one of the most quotable films too of all time. It falls into that category. So yeah, guys. Well, of course, this is Couch Potato Theater on the Fandom Podcast Network discussing This Is Spinal Tap. And please, if you are listening to this, check out the video on YouTube. And if you're watching this on YouTube, thank you. Please hit a like, share us out, follow us, of course, on Facebook. And as we mentioned earlier, too, we have the Hair Metal Podcast on the network as well. Check that out. Those videos are up. And we also have a Hair Metal Podcast Facebook group. We talk about a lot of stuff, so make sure you check us out. My name is Kevin. You can find me on social media at Spartan_Phoenix on all of the socials, also on Facebook, also the Hair Metal Podcast and on Fandom Podcast Network. You guys, you're off on the grid. I get you. That's fine. Go find them on the Hair Metal Podcast Facebook group, right, Mike?
Yep. Yeah, you can find me on the Hair Metal Podcast Facebook group. Yep.
But also, too, check out the future Hair Metal Podcast as well, because I know Nez will be on there as well. And hey, Bobby, I wouldn't mind getting you in for some other movie podcasts and stuff. Maybe we'll chat about that later, okay?
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, awesome. All right, guys, check us out. Of course, this is Couch Potato Theater. This is Spinal Tap. I'm going to go listen to She Puts the Bitch in Obituary from Mike. Play that live, and then I might on continuous repeat go back and put Butt Call on as well. So, Derek Smalls will rock it out. Guys, thank you so much. This has been a blast.
You got
Thank you.
Care,
all right, guys. Till next time, check us out on the couch on Couch Potato Theater and here on the Fandom Podcast Network. This is Spinal Tap. We'll see you guys next time.